call the meeting to order. So
Quick laughing. Yeah.
So officially call the meeting of June 1st, 2020 to order. And first up is the adoption of the agenda, and we have some an amendment to it. I'm going to suggest it's moved by Dan, seconded by Lisa. Karen, did you or Kathy want to read that out, what that is as amended?
The amendment is to add correspondence from the Arthur Chamber of Commerce President Tom Gorky in support of Councillor Hearn's notice of motion.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it would be that the agenda for June 1st, 2020 regular meeting of council be accepted and passed as amended to include what you just said.
Correct.
Okay. Any discussion on that? All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Any disclosure of pecuniary interests? I don't have any this evening. Councillor Hearn?
No, I don't.
Councillor Yates?
No.
Councillor McCabe?
None.
And Councillor Burke?
No.
Okay, thank you. Next, we're on to our County Council update. Welcome, County Councillor Cork.
Okay, I just got a message here too. Okay, we ready for me upside down? Listen,
Sure, go ahead.
I'm good. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity of having a chance to talk to you. And I do have a couple of topics, and I'm going to start with something that I find, and I'm sure you do too, a little troubling, and that's information contained in a report from the Wellington Public Health. And it says that compared to the rest of Wellington County, both Wellington North and Minto have been identified as having a higher percentage of low-income households, a higher percentage of adults without a high school education, and higher rates of poor health outcomes. And those poor health outcomes include such things as higher emergency department visits, higher lung cancer related deaths, and higher hospitalization for injuries and hospitalization for diabetes and related incidents. And what the report notes, and this is maybe the good part of it, is that a lack of public transportation is one of the largest barriers in accessing services, including health, mental health, parenting, assisted living, social support, general social and recreational activities, employment, and really that covers just about the waterfront in terms of what life's all about. And we can only hope that the Wellington County's new Ride Well transportation system, well, it's not that new, it started late last year, but that it will in fact be able to address this lack of affordable transit, particularly for rural Wellington. Good news is that Ride Well is now offering door-to-door service in Guelph for rides that start or finish in Wellington County. So you've got to start outside Guelph, but the way it was before, if you got a Ride Well, you had to get dropped off at the Walmart at the south end of Guelph and then get a cab or get public transit. So that's over. So now, once you're in Guelph, you can't get a Ride Well that'll take you within Guelph, but you can get a Ride Well that'll take you back into Wellington County. So this Uber-like ride service operates Monday to Friday, 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. And you can book Ride Well trips 3 ways, and they are still running, although they used to allow multiple calls in one car. They're not now, it's just one during COVID, but you can book it 3 ways: by downloading the Ride Well app, or by going to the website, www.ridewell.ca, or by calling 833-900-7433. I'm sure you'll recall that very early in the COVID crisis, Wellington County put up $1 million for low interest loans to local businesses in need, Wellington County businesses in need. And this money was out there very quickly, as far as I know, at least as earlier than federal and provincial money. And of that $1 million of county money on offer, 967,000 has been approved in loans. Basically, it might have hit the million by now, but very close to the million. And in all, 73 loans averaging about $13,000 each were approved. That's the average request was for 20,000, but for whatever, they knocked most of those down to 13. And of the 73 loans, 4 went to Minto and 3 to Wellington North. Center Wellington and Erin got the most with 39 and 13 respectively. So hopefully that money will come back to Wellington once those businesses get back on their feet and they're able to repay the loans. And I wanted just for a minute to talk about a grant that Wellington North has been given by Wellington County of $25,000 to cover 27% funding for downtown revitalization projects in Mount Forest and Arthur. And this money also funds community improvement program. And the grant is designed to assist community and local businesses starting to reopening following COVID-19, including an online shopping program known as Shop Wellington North that's being developed by local chambers of commerce. And that allows businesses to put merchandise online for delivery as well as other things. In terms of me being upside down today, I'm happy to report that beginning in June, Wellington County committee meetings will return to face-to-face rather than via conference calls. So apparently we're going to be social distancing using the entire council chamber, including the spectator gallery. And the full county council session will not meet face-to-face in June. It will continue on as a conference call. So with no meetings in July and August, hopefully maybe by September, we'll be all back to face-to-face. The item I heard the most about, I think, over at least one of them the last couple of months was the landfill and transfer sites being closed. And as you, I'm sure know, I'm happy to report that the transfer stations and the Riverstown landfill site are all open and operating at their regular hours. And I wanted to speak just for a second about green bins. And by now, everyone in Wellington North should have received their new green bin with kitchen catcher enclosed. I did hear apparently about somebody who didn't notice the kitchen catcher enclosed, and it went out with the green bin collection. So have a look and get your kitchen catcher out. The day after the green bins got dropped off, I got a call from an irate resident saying he had his own compost pile and he did not want a green bin. And what was the county doing, wasting money, giving him a green bin he didn't want? Excuse me. And to add insult to injury, the man said a couple of days after he got his first green bin, the delivery truck returned to his neighborhood and everybody got a second one. And he was definitely not a happy camper. Another active backyard composter called to ask what he's supposed to do with a green bin he doesn't want. He said he's not going to give it back. He's going to use it to store his bird seed. Obviously, the drop-off of a second green bin was a glitch, and the Solid Waste Services has corrected that. And despite surveys showing that the great majority of rural as well as urban residents want green bins, if there is still anybody out there who is serious about not wanting a green bin, they can call the county and it'll be picked up, or it can be dropped off at the landfill site or roads garages. But if the green bin is returned and then later you decide you want one, it's going to cost you $20 to get a new one. So you just might want to leave it out in the garage and think about it for a minute. And you got to remember that the green bin can do things your backyard composter cannot do, such as taking meat and scraps, bones, grease, and fish. And food waste represents about 1/3 of our waste stream. And our landfill site is literally irreplaceable. And an alternative system such as constructing an incinerator would cost multiple millions. Every foot of landfill is worth $1 million at Riverston. And if we can get the food waste out of the waste stream, we'll be saving ourselves those millions of dollars. So that, from standing on my head, is my county report. And I thank you for your time. And if there's any questions, I'd be pleased.
Okay, any questions for Campbell? Steve and then Sherry.
Just got a quick question. Thanks for the report, Campbell. Is there any way that they're going to track whether the green bins are actually going to be used, or how do they measure that success?
Well, they'll definitely have tracking on the volume of waste they get. It's Waste Management in Mount Forest is picking it up, and it's going to All Treat and Arthur, and we pay, you know, a rate for it. So they'll definitely be tracking on how successful or not successful it may happen to be.
Okay, thank you.
Sherry?
Yeah, Campbell, you just answered one of my questions, and that was where the question that I've been getting a lot is a lot of people seem very interested in using their green bin, but wanted to know what was going to happen to the collection. So nice to hear that it's going to All Treat. And I would expect that those folks that have not received a green bin and should have, can they also reach out to the county or one of the yard depots and pick one up?
Absolutely, they can call solid waste at the county or email them, and they can either pick one up or they'll bring one out.
Okay, thank you very much.
But you do have to remember that apartment buildings don't get them, condos don't get them. And the issue being that, you know, 100 little green bins all lined up down the road just doesn't work. And the way those facilities handle it now is they have their own like roll-off bins at some place in their property. And still up for some discussion is whether or not the county should be paying for those roll-off green bins or in somehow participating in that.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Dan, I saw you had your hand up.
No, I'm good, Andy. Campbell's answered most of the questions.
Lisa?
Yeah. 2 comments and a question. Is that okay, Campbell?
Come on.
I was going to talk about the Shop Wellington North portal later under my report, but it's pretty brief anyway. It's actually live now. I don't know whether anyone's taken a look at it, but there are a few select products on it that you can order and some gift certificates. So that's shopwellingtonnorth.com. Another comment. I don't know whether you've received any good comments, Campbell. It sounds like you've received some negative ones, but I just wanted to pass on a couple good ones.
Thank you.
I've gotten a few thank yous for the Riverstown dump being open, and I don't really have anything to do with that. So I thought I'd pass that on to you.
Thank you.
And the question, and I should know this, but when does the rural recycling go weekly?
When does what? Sorry, Lisa.
The rural recycling. We're on bi-weekly now. When does that switch over to weekly?
I think it's July the 7th that we get started, but that information is in the green bin, but it's bi-weekly for recycling in the green bin, or excuse me, weekly for the green bin and the recycling, and bi-weekly every other week for the garbage, the yellow bags.
Okay, thank you. That's it.
Okay. And I did get some good green bin calls as well. But I thought it just pointed up the fact that there still is a little hesitancy, you know, from some corners. And it really doesn't matter whether it's a composter, it doesn't matter at all whether it's a composter in the backyard or a green bin. Either one works. And the object is to get that food waste out of the waste stream. It's expensive stuff.
Thanks, Campbell. Anybody else have other questions, comments? Okay, not seeing any others. So thank you, Campbell, for your presentation. Upside down or right side up. Either way, it's been good.
So I can go back to right side up now?
Sure.
Thanks. Thanks,
Thank you,
everyone.
Thanks, Campbell.
Okay, that brings us to adoption of the minutes. So we have a recommendation here moved by Sherry, seconded by Steve, that the minutes of the regular meeting of council held on May 19th, 2020 be adopted as circulated. Any questions or comments on those minutes? Okay, all those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. And now we're on to business arising from previous meetings of council. We have a notice of motion from Councillor Hearn. Do you have a seconder lined up for this, Lisa?
No.
So I guess that's the first thing we need to do. I'm going to assume that you're the mover. Who would someone like to second Lisa's?
I can move it in or second it, sorry.
Steve? Okay. Would you like to speak to this before we start, Lisa?
Well, I think it's pretty self-explanatory. There have been so much there was so much good discussion around the revitalization committee, and I don't think that we should throw all that aside. We should be harnessing that energy and moving forward with a little bit of that. I mean, the Connecting Link project, working in Arthur, it's kind of our one kick at the can, and I think we should get it right. So I think it's really worthy of some discussion with our stakeholders.
Okay. With that said, we have a mover and a seconder. I'll open the floor for discussion. Anybody else like to dive in here? Steve?
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. I mean, we have to consult our community stakeholders, and this is the prime opportunity and to do that and work in conjunction with them and the province and the BIAs in Arthur and the chamber and the companies that are downtown that are going to be affected by the probably the closure of Main Street for a while, and then two, the reopening of it.
Okay, thank you. And anyone else? The Mike, did you want to? Mike, go ahead.
You're on mute.
You're muted, Mike.
There we go. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Great. Yeah, just as it relates to the motion, and maybe it doesn't necessarily have to be part of this motion, but I was going to raise it when the BIA minutes come up. Council might want to give some consideration to establishing a budget as it relates to the enhancements, just for some guidance for the group so that they have a sense of where this, enhancements can take on a lot of different forms, I anticipate. And so it might be worthwhile for council to give some consideration to establishing a budget aligned with that. So there is some guidance for the BIA and the chamber leading into this.
Okay.
How so,
Thanks,
Mike?
Mike. I was thinking about that. Go ahead, Steve.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Steve?
How do you see that playing out, Mike?
Council picks a number and says enhancement shall not go beyond this number. That's how I see it playing out. I don't want to overcomplicate it, but
No.
I think it's clear that we want to involve them, but I think it's also clear it's not a blank check. So some guidance I think always helps around a budget item like this. But
Okay.
again, that's a council decision. It's just something that I thought was worth raising.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Lisa?
I did want
Lisa,
to
go ahead.
add, can you hear me? Because my internet is, yes?
Yep.
I don't think they're necessarily, I do agree with the budget. I don't know how that's going to work, but I don't think all of it is necessarily them looking for a blank check. I mean, we do have a BIA now, and we have a Chamber of Commerce, and, you know, I mean, some of it will likely be on them, I would think, but how that would work, I don't know.
Yeah, I was thinking about this a little bit, and I don't know how it divvied up, but I mean, when we did the what was called the Big Dig in Mount Forest, which was before my time on council, I know there was a contribution to that project from the township. There was contributions from the BIA, which ran over a number of years in terms of repayment, and other partners as well. And I don't know whether we can use that as a model or not, or Dan, I think you were around then. Would you have any comments or thoughts about whether that's a suitable model for us to think about or not?
Well, it wouldn't hurt probably to try to use the same model that they used here. There was a contribution by the BIA. They borrowed the money from the municipality and paid it back over a number of years. So I think, you know, once they establish a plan, and then the plan in Mount Forest was bigger than what the actual finished product was, because, you know, the numbers had to be scaled back to a certain degree. So yeah, I think, you know, the municipality needs to be, and everybody needs to be aware that of the costs. But I think we can work it with the BIA and the chamber and the municipality as a three-way partnership.
Okay, Lisa?
Yeah, that is one of the models that the BIA was potentially discussing. If you read the minutes that'll be of the BIA meeting that will come later, they have established a committee to kind of take a look at some of the things that they think would help to be done in conjunction with the Connecting Link project. So I can't remember who's on that. Tom Grecky, Paula Coffey, I think, and Sheila Faulkner.
Okay. Mike, we can deal with this motion, but should we be asking for a report from staff in terms of building a framework around the budget and the process?
Yeah, we can certainly go back and look at how things proceeded via the Big Dig in Mount Forest. The one comment I would make is this project is not to the same scale that the Big Dig was as it relates to really the underground infrastructure. I think we all kind of know that. So that the opportunities are somewhat limited because of that, because of the nature of the project. But we can look back and see what the framework was as it related to the loan that the BIA entered into with the municipality as part of that project.
So we could go ahead and endorse this motion to get the process going and ask staff to come back with a report.
Yeah, I do struggle a little bit with what that means as it relates to a budget, Mayor Lennox. Like, I don't know what, I think the BIA's had some conversations and about what the type of things they're looking for. Maybe we can get some of those specifics so we can, from a staff perspective, price some of that out so we have an idea of what we're talking about from a budget standpoint. Because at this point, I don't think we really know.
Okay. Lisa, did you want to comment on that?
Yeah, it's my understanding that early this month, they will be getting together prior to the next BIA meeting, which is the middle of the month. So likely this week to establish some of those priorities and the report to the BIA shortly after that. So that's the kind of timeline that they've been working around.
Okay. So are you involved with that group, Lisa, directly?
Not directly, no. I guess I'm a liaison to that group, suppose.
Okay. So I think, and I don't want to speak out of turn, but I think, you know, we're willing to, generally what I'm hearing is we're willing to be a partner, but it's not a blank check. So we need to kind of build a framework around that as to what the total budget is and what our contribution to it would be in an appropriate way. So I guess just a matter of communicating that back to that group as well. Dan, did you want to?
I think in Mount Forest, yeah, when they did the Mount Forest project, they also, or no, first of all, I wanted to ask, what is the time frame for the Connecting Link, just the Connecting Link project? Is it next year?
Yeah, it's for construction next year.
You're okay. Like when they did the dig in Mount Forest, the BIA or the municipality, I guess, in conjunction together, they hired a consultant to look at lighting and trees and benches and all that type of thing. And it ended up getting scaled way back. But I think that the BIA and the chamber, I think they have the ability to be able to come up with those ideas without maybe getting large dollars involved with the consultant. So just that's something to think about. I think with the BIA, when they're sitting down discussing what they want, just to not worry about, you know, trying to avoid the use of a high price consultant if at all possible.
I would agree with that.
Okay. Any other questions or comments then? Lisa?
I just missed the last little bit of what Councillor Yake said. He's actually frozen on my screen. So can you hear me, Dan?
We seem to be having some technical issues. Councillor Yake is freezing and Councillor Hearn is freezing. Is anybody else seeing that?
Yes.
Yeah.
I haven't actually yet.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so where would we like to recap from? What did you miss, Lisa?
The last little bit of what Dan was talking about with respect to bringing in a consultant, and then it just went dead, and he's frozen again on me.
Okay. Do you want to try again, Dan, or I can try to relay it?
No, I just was saying, Lisa, like if the BIA and the chamber can avoid the use of and try to avoid the use of a consultant, I think they can come up with the ideas that they want for their downtown and not pay the high price consultant like you know what happened in Mount Forest, and then it was scaled back and it caused a lot of I think there was a lot of animosity between the township and the BIA because they wanted everything and the township wanted it scaled back for all kinds of purposes. One was money and two was maintenance issues, the whole type of thing. So I think you have to be really leery about that idea of a consultant.
Okay. Did you catch that, Lisa?
Yeah, and I tend to agree with Councillor Yake on that. In Arthur, there is so much talent and creativity. I think would be really hard to top the team of people that we have there. It would just be so hard to do. So I'm proud of them.
Okay. Steve?
I was just going to say, if we offer up some money to them, I would not want to see it go towards a consultant, especially when, as Councillor Hearn said, there is so much talent in the BIA as it is already, as they sit now. I don't think, like Dan said, we can avoid a consultant. I think that's the best route for sure.
Okay. So I think then we have a direction that we need to get those people engaged in terms of coming up with a scale of the project, and then we can talk more reasonably about budget and ask staff to weigh in on some of these things to make sure we're got all the bases covered. Any other discussion then before we, Lisa, go ahead.
Would that report include consulting them on disruptions? while they're completely embracing this, I mean, businesses are shut down right now, and this is going to happen next year when they're up and running. So would that be part of the discussion, or is that something that would normally occur anyway? Does that make sense?
I think I'm not going to speak for staff, but I think for sure that should be part of the conversation.
Okay.
Because it does involve all parties to make it work properly. Karen, did you want to?
Matt, you're unmuted. Did you want to say something? And then I would just like to, we just can't see you. And then I would just like to recap the direction. I know the resolution because it's the recommendation is written out. Sorry, go ahead, Matt.
No, yeah, absolutely. The process will include public consultation. And like the engineer or the consultant helps us put numbers to what some of the planned ideas are. So it will, I think there's a need for that in the process just to better understand kind of what the numbers will be. But as far as public consultation for a project of this scale, that's very typical, and that will be typical.
Thank you. Karen, did you want to?
Yep, so there is a motion on the floor that's been moved by Councilor Hearn and Councilor McCabe, and that is in front of you on your agenda sheet. And outside of that, the direction to staff is to receive feedback from the BIA Chamber Committee who are meeting this week as to what some of their enhancements want to be so that staff can get some sort of costing around that.
Okay. Is everybody comfortable with that?
The only question I would have is they're meeting this week to discuss some enhancements. Lisa, do you think that gives them enough time? Like when would council like to see the report from staff with a costing around it? It seems quick that they would have all of their enhancements at their first meeting.
Yeah, I think that's pretty ambitious, but I'm going to ask Lisa if she has a sense of the speed with which the group wants to move.
I'm not really sure. That being said, this is a committee of doers and they don't like to sit around. They like homework. So, gosh, they, I don't know. Did you get any, yeah, Dale, did you get any sense of that at our last meeting? Or have you spoken to anyone since then?
So I have. I've spoken through you, Mayor Lennox. I've spoken to both the BIA and the Chamber. So I think they're both right now counting on council being supportive of this resolution, that we work together to figure out what sort of enhancements we want to do. As Councillor Hearn said, there's been a small group of really great people that are going to come together and come up with some of the ideas. So I think it's totally realistic for us to let that group get together. We can facilitate the discussions with the BIA. We can facilitate the discussions with the Chamber, and then we can bring something back to council, hopefully even as quick as the next meeting, with some high level thoughts around what they're considering. And then Matt, maybe between us and the engineer, then we can have the discussions around costing and stuff like that.
Okay, go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, through you, Mayor Lennox. I would think September probably would be reasonable to get feedback in. I don't think we have an agreement yet as it relates to the connecting link. And yeah, I think early fall is going to be, for inputs into that project, will be completely reasonable at this point in time based on what I know.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, anybody else have anything they'd like to add? Okay, we've had a pretty good discussion, so I think we'll just bring this to a vote and we can work out, there's more details to be worked out as we go. So call the motion. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Next item on our agenda is a council open forum topic. And the topic I chose was Wellington North municipal role in pandemic recovery. And I put part 1 on there really because I just wanted to get this discussion started. This is not going to be something we're going to come away from this saying, here's where we're going, this is our plan. I just wanted to kind of get a feel for how everybody feels about, you know, what our role is, will need to be going forward, what things they see in the community that will impact what we can and can't do. So yeah, let's just have an open discussion about, you know, what's the impact of this pandemic on our community and what's our role in helping to restart, I guess is the word I can use. So anybody want to dive in?
I think we probably have to take a lot of our cues probably from the province and obviously the federal government as well. That being said, just because the province might open something doesn't mean that we necessarily have to. We have to have our own kind of, I think, our own unique approach to any kind of recovery or reopening.
Yeah, like one of the things that I think is that we're going to have to deal with at some point, and other municipalities, I hear them talking about this too, is infrastructure spending. So after the last recession, there was a significant infusion of money from federal and provincial governments to stimulate some infrastructure spending. And, you know, some municipalities are even going so far as to right now increase their number of shovel-ready projects. Is that something we think that we want to participate in? And, you know, those are some of the questions I have in my mind. I mean, I struggle with, you know, this, if we talk about the Great Recession of 2008, 2009, that was the most dramatic economic downturn since the Great Depression in the 1930s. And it looks like a blip compared to what we're probably facing right now. So what is that going to mean to our taxpayers? What's that going to mean to our businesses? And how do we facilitate that? I mean, we have limited resources. So yeah, I totally agree, Steve. We need to be including our federal and provincial partners in this as well. But I think the question is, if they pony up the money, where are we prepared to do something with it? Go ahead, Steve.
Say they do pony up the money and there is money available for infrastructure within Wellington North. I guess, Matt, my question is to you and Mike as well. Would we be ready for it from a staff point of view? Just because the money's there and there's, of course, there's always infrastructure to be done. Before this all hit the fan, I think we had a pretty ambitious infrastructure and builds and repaving going on in the township before this even happened. So I don't know where that leaves us right now, Matt, but even if we do have money, do we have places to put it and use it, and can we get it actually done?
Do you feel like diving in on that, Matt?
Through you, Mayor Lennox. Like Arthur Wastewater Treatment Plant Phase 2 comes to mind, and I think the water systems in both Arthur and Mount Forest have projects that are worthy. We still have underground infrastructure that is cast iron and ductile iron, things that could be improved upon. So I think there's projects out there. Does that put more, you know, we have and Adam could correct me, like a 20-year plan as it relates to capital projects. So it would just be increasing the speed of that plan, I guess, based on the funding that's available. But yeah, it would make for busy times as it relates to, there's lots happening, but there's always lots happening.
Anybody else want to dive in here? Did you want to speak to that, Adam?
Certainly, Mayor Lennox, and through you, we do have a long-term plan, which is predominantly predicated on our DC study in terms of facilitating growth. So there are a number of projects that have been earmarked through that long-term plan. Just because we do have the plan in place, it would be nice to see some of that growth come to fruition to facilitate the capital spend and the maintenance thereof into the future years. So just having projects at the ready doesn't necessarily mean they are project worthy at this time for the municipality. I would like to see some of the infrastructure works that we have in our already aggressive 2020 plan come to a close prior to perhaps pursuing some of those.
Okay. Thank you. Dan?
I don't think there's anything wrong with being ready for some of capital projects that do. We've been on a very aggressive line in the last number of years, but kind of going back to your statement, Mayor Lennox, that this makes 2008, 2009 look like a little blip. I'm not just all that confident that the federal and provincial governments are going to be handing out a lot of money when this is all over. So, I mean, there's nothing wrong with being ready, but you know, this is going to be a long time before I think the money starts to flow for these types of things. The other thing I was going to mention too, and about our role, I think communication from our staff and certainly from you, Mayor Lennox, to the community. Your updates on the radio, the local radio station are good. You know, they're keeping people updated as to what's going on in the municipality. So I think that's important and needs to continue it needs to continue until this is pretty much, out of the way. So I think the communication with the public is so important, not only, as it is with the federal and provincial level, but at our level too, because it's where the rubber hits the road in a local municipality. So I'd keep those up and continue to let people know what's going on.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else like to get into this topic? The other avenue that I think merits some thought is, and we've already been involved with some of it. Councillor Cork talked about the loan program that the county put together for individual businesses. We have a community improvement program and other programs like that to assist local businesses. Is that, do we need to be focusing more on an individual business basis and how we can facilitate their recovery too, or do we need to leave that to others, I guess, is one of the questions in my mind. And then the other question in my mind as well is, as businesses and individuals recover from this, I mean, there's going to be some financial strain on a number of them. We don't know how it's going to go in terms of, are we going to get all our taxes collected and so on, but what's the ability of our residents and businesses going to be to pay taxes in the future? Or, do we need to be holding taxes pretty steady in order to help businesses recover? Those types of things, I guess. I'm really just, at this point, I'm really interested to hear what you guys have to say and think about it, because the big question marks in my mind. Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, those are big questions, and it's an unknown road that we're kind of on right now. And like, I would look to Adam and Mike and ask what's their thoughts on that. How would we even implement something like this? Hopefully, yeah, that we get all the taxes in, and I know there is some grace periods or for forgiveness for some, time-wise for taxes, but we still have to give our money to the county the day it's due. So where would we get the money? I'm not in favor of obviously taxes going up, but how and what can we do to help these businesses out, and in what kind of a time frame could we start helping them out?
Yeah, so through you, Mayor Lennox, if that's okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
So yeah, Mayor Lennox's original question was around, what role do we play, the municipality play, as it relates to supporting businesses, I guess, as they're coming back. Outside of our current CIP program, we don't really have a program that exists of that nature, and I'm not really sure what Mayor Lennox is envisioning around this. I guess the other question around budget and taxation going forward, I think, as we look forward, this is going to have a lasting impact on residents and businesses for a number of years. Our goal from a council and a staff perspective over the last number of years is to give serious consideration to consumer price index when we're talking about tax rate increases. Year over year, next year is going to look a lot different. There's probably going to be a negative CPI. So I think this council needs to start thinking about that now and start being prepared for that conversation as it relates to the taxation standpoint. In terms of what we can offer to businesses as they start back up outside of, the programs that we have in place, we don't really have a backlog, I guess, of dollars kind of set aside for that purpose. The dollars that we have, we're in good position as it relates to cash flow. We're not concerned about being able to provide the services that we've always been able to provide for the balance of the year. But I think it's more going to be about what the expectation of our residents and businesses are about taxes going forward. I think that's where council should spend some time thinking and focusing on that and how we're going to address that going forward.
And I would just add to that too, Mike, if the taxation is being curtailed or maybe that's not the right word, more measured even than previously, and we're going to continue to invest in infrastructure, then how do we finance that as well? Are we going to take on debt to do some of that? These are some of the topics that we're going to have to wrestle with. And I wasn't very clear in what I was trying to say. I was not trying to say that we need a new program to help businesses as much as making sure that we do what we can from a facilitating business perspective, through things like BR&E and making sure that we help kick barriers out of the way to business recovery. And I guess I'm just looking for, ideas around the table of what are you hearing? What do you feel is the way we need to go, other than, and this is very early, just trying to start the conversation. So delighted to hear anything you guys feel about that. Steve?
Would there be any sense in doing not a quick survey, but a kind of, I guess, a questionnaire for our local businesses to see what they think they're going to need before we start telling them what we think they need?
I think that's probably a smart way to go, Steve, but is that something we need to think about putting together? And I think it's still too soon for some of that, but I know I was talking to a downtown business owner on the weekend, and I was kind of surprised at how upbeat and positive he was. So, some businesses may be struggling more than others, and some may prosper under these new circumstances as well. So, Steve, did you have something else?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I think the level a level of what help each individual business needs is going to be just that, individual. There's some sectors that haven't really been affected, I think, because they were deemed essential, and they're still open for business, and they keep going on. And we've got great workers that are on the part of the essential workers. businesses. So yeah, I'm not sure how we measure that. I don't know how we gauge it, but I would, if there is something that we could do to find out how much they need or what they don't need, and in ways of maybe trying to get out of their way, even at a municipal level. I think it's a question worth asking our business community for sure. And I think we could probably do it through the BIA or the chamber.
Okay. I think there's some of that surveying activity already happening in some areas. Anybody else want to
excuse me,
weigh in on some of this? Okay, I'm not seeing a lot of other activity, so from my perspective, this is a topic that isn't going to go away anytime soon. We're going to have to keep dealing with this as things unfold. So if you're hearing things out in the community or from individuals, certainly I appreciate what you're hearing, and let's see if we can put our heads together and come up with the best way with the resources we have to help, because we want to make sure that our businesses continue to prosper, at least from my perspective.
Sounds good.
Any final comments from anybody?
No.
Okay, thanks everybody. Next we come to our items for consideration. So any of those that we'd like to pull out for further discussion? I think, Mike, you were talking about the Arthur BIA meeting minutes. Is that right?
Yeah, there was 3 items that are identified in those minutes that I thought, that for at least for council to be aware of.
Okay. Any other items that people would like, Steve?
I'd like 5A, please. That's the correspondence from Karen to the Ministry of Transportation.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any others?
Oh, 4, Andy, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
4B.
That's the wooden
I think,
crush.
Yeah, I think we should just hear a little bit about that.
Okay. Any others? So just quickly recap here what we have so far. 1C, the Arthur BIA minutes. 4B, the report on the wood brush and garden material program. 5A, the correspondence from Karen to the Minister of Transportation. And that's all I got. Does anybody have any others?
Sorry, Andy. Can I pull 2B? I just wanted just a real quick question for Dale about it.
Okay, that's the site plan agreement?
Yes.
Okay. Anybody have any others?
I think Lisa does.
Lisa, go ahead. Sorry.
It's been up a long time. Didn't think you could see me.
And now you're frozen.
5B?
5B,
Yes.
that's the Center Wellington Community Foundation one. Okay. So I'll just recap again. I've got 1C, 2B, 4B, 5A, and 5B. Any others? Okay, so let's deal with all the other ones. I have a motion here moved by Lisa, seconded by Dan, that all items listed under items for consideration on the June 1st, 2020 council agenda, with the exception of those items identified for separate discussion, be approved and the recommendations therein be adopted. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. So that brings us back to 1C. This is the Arthur BIA meeting. So I have a motion moved by Steve, seconded by Sherry, that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Wellington North receive the minutes of the Arthur BIA meeting held on May 20th, 2020. Mike, do you mind highlighting those items you were referring to? Just
Sure. Yep, through you, Mayor Lennox. Yeah, there were basically 3 items kind of suggested near on page, let me just see here, page 26 of your agenda. One of the items that the BIA has made note of is the concern with the state of the building, the old Queen's Hotel building. And recognizing that I think both Dale, our staff member, and Councillor Hearn are hearing about this on a regular basis, I thought it would make sense for council to be kind of aware of the issue. And both Dale and Darren are part of the call and are aware that this was one of the items that we haven't gotten a formal letter from the BIA, but I don't think that doesn't preclude us from talking about it and talking about what council's expectations are around that building. And there is some history and some complications maybe around that building itself, in that the township has been in discussions and working with the building owner to a certain degree. And then it's also in a pretty, not a very welcoming state, as most would recognize who have driven through Arthur. So yeah, certainly both Dale and Darren can kind of speak from it from both their perspectives. And Mayor Lennox, you can probably also offer some perspective as it relates to conversations that we've had with the developer. Dale, I'll maybe turn to you first just to kind of update the conversations that you've had with the property owner.
Thanks, Mike. Through you, Mayor Lennox. So this has been a regular topic of conversation, I would say, at probably the last 2 chamber meetings as well as the last 2 BIA meetings. And I think the letter did come in earlier this week from the BIA. But not in time to hit the council package, but that's okay. So it's just, they're voicing their concern with how it looks, their frustration with the lack of progress. And I know I've reached out to the building owner a couple of times, didn't get much of a response, although recently got a response saying there were working on it, and we've been affected by COVID-19 and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, it is, I think, a sense of frustration, certainly from the local community perspective.
Yeah, and just to add some context to this, we have had some discussions with that building owner, developer, about possibly the space in the existing, some space in the existing building or space in another proposed building for community space as a possible replacement for the Arthur Seniors Hall and possibly some other spaces. But it's been very preliminary so far in terms of the discussion. Just okay, here's some spaces. Could you use them? But we haven't got back to, you know, solidifying what our intent is, and I think maybe that's a contribution to this as well, to some extent. How serious are we in terms of being willing to use some of that space, or do we need to start looking somewhere else if this builder is not going to deal with the building in its current state? So, Darren, you probably have some comments in terms of the actual status of the building.
I do. Thank you, Mayor Lennox. Right, so the township has issued an order to remedy an unsafe building. The developer's engineer has provided a report, and some work has gone on to make the building safe for work to continue. And they do have a building permit for structural repairs to that building. Problem is, work doesn't appear to be progressing. We've asked that opening the sidewalk be a priority. I guess I'm yeah, I guess I'm looking for a bit of direction from council on where we're looking at going. We're moving forward from building department side of things, whether it's direction to reach out to the township solicitor and township engineer to assist with resolving this issue.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else have anything they'd like to comment on or questions, Steve?
Dale, you had said that you had tried to reach out and get chatting to the owners of the building. Is there any time frame at all on when they think they might get back to work and hopefully maybe get that sidewalk opened up again?
No. Nothing definitive.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? I think we probably need to give some sort of direction in terms of what our wishes are. I mean, it's pretty much an eyesore the way it is. I'd like a timeline attached at the very least to when that could be remedied, or we need to start taking further action. I mean, we have had some preliminary discussions. I think we need to solidify what those discussions are, whether we're interested in continuing down that road. But we haven't even got a firm plan from the developer yet. So I'm not sure which comes first, the chicken or the egg in this circumstance. But I think I thought it was a worthy location for an alternative public space. But it's been so preliminary, we really haven't had a lot of discussion about it at this table. So, Steve, I saw you with your hand up there.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Was there any kind of a timeline put on this rebuild or renovation, Darren, that we can kind of hold them to without, we have to invoke all the stuff with that's gone on with COVID-19 and stuff, but has there been a timeline established with them before all this went down?
The initial order said immediately, and they were fairly quick to turn around the engineer's report and making it safe for work to continue. They haven't been very definitive with when their timelines are going to be, but the township can absolutely set those timelines or work with the developer to get those timelines in place.
That might be the best course of action then.
So you're suggesting, Steve, we should be a little bit more forceful in terms of setting a time schedule?
Oh, forceful sounds a little heavy, but yes. It can't just continue to look like that for months and months and months. And then you get into winter and who knows what kind of an excuse there'll be if it lasts that long. So yeah, if it's possible to work with them, like the developer, like you suggested, Darren, or at least get an idea of when they're going to restart.
Sherry, I saw you with your hand up.
That can be done.
I agree. I think that there needs to be some discussions with the developer to get that moving forward. Now, Darren, you had said about the sidewalk. There's no concern with the building the way it sort of is. It's like, how far along would that have to be before that sidewalk could be reopened?
That front wall would have to be stabilized, which basically means the ceiling and floor system reinstated to make that safe for the sidewalk to open.
So there's quite a bit of work to be done. I think that there needs to be a little push given, because it is an eyesore right on the main street of Arthur. And I think that those folks that have put a lot of time and effort into making downtown Arthur appealing, that's drawing away from it. And I think that some discussions need to happen and get it moving forward.
Okay. Thank you, Dan. I saw you with your hand up.
Yeah, I agree with what Councillor Burke and Councillor McCabe are saying. I think we need to be a little more aggressive in trying to get this project cleaned up. I mean, there's this one in Mount Forest. There's one beside the TD Bank that's kind of in dire shape too. So I don't think those are places where we don't want those types of things to drag on. So I think we need to try to be a little more aggressive. I know it sounds like you've had, the mayor and Darren and Dale have had conversations with the owner, but yeah, I think it's been that way long enough, and I think it's time to get a little more aggressive and push this thing along one way or the other.
Okay. Thank you. Anybody else want to? Steve?
Sorry, just one final note. So is that enough to give direction to staff to put something in place, or do we need a motion for that, or?
Through you, Mayor Lennox, that's enough direction for us to be able to move forward with what we.
Okay.
Mike?
Yeah, Andy, Mayor Lennox, I think there's two things at play, and yeah, absolutely, Darren, appreciate the comments as it relates to setting timelines. We can certainly do that. I do think hand in hand with that is probably Dale and myself working on a report to council about the potential that we saw from a community space, because I can imagine the developer is going to say, well, this is part of what is happening as well, so it needs to be addressed. So I think we need to get council up to speed on what that potentially looks like and how committed council is to playing a role around that community space, so that we have that answer for the developer at the same time that we're telling him he has to complete work.
Yeah, I think though that the timing in terms of doing some basic work around that building is important too, because if we're going to enter into a partnership with this person to develop that community space, we want to know that things are going to be dealt with in a timely way too. So I think that the two things do go hand in hand.
I agree.
Karen?
I just want to, so far I have direction staff to commit the owner to a firm timeline and development plan, and further direction that the CAO and EDO will bring a report to council outlining the opportunities for a community space with that owner on that property.
Okay. I think that seems like a reasonable approach. Anybody else have anything they'd like to add? Okay, I think we'll take that to the next step. I'm sure we'll be talking about this again. Now, Mike, you did indicate there was a couple other items on that BIA.
The one item we've basically addressed as it related to the Councillor Hearn's notice of motion. I was going to raise and we've discussed it, so I don't think there's any further discussion there. They also make reference, and Dale can maybe speak to this or Councillor Hearn, about setting up, requesting initial funding for a bank account. I haven't seen, I don't know if that formal request has come in, but again, it would be, I don't know what it exactly is that they're looking for from the township, but I'm assuming it's a small stipend to set up the account for the BIA. But I just wanted council to be aware of those asks that were included in the minutes.
Okay. Dale, do you have any greater context around that?
Through you, Mayor Lennox. No, that's really what it is. They've got their signing authorities in place. They've now appointed a treasurer. They've appointed a secretary. They have the chair. They were interested in opening the bank account. They don't have any funds. So the request was just for some initial funding. And essentially the way I saw it was hopefully in 2021, there'll be the BIA tax levy, which is normally where the BIA get their funding. So this would just be, in my mind, a small advance on their 2021 funding so that they could get their bank account open and start doing some things. So I don't believe the request has come in yet, but it probably will shortly.
Okay. So is that something we could do without council direction in terms of setting up doing an advance on 2021 and giving them a few dollars to put in that account? Mike, Karen, somebody?
I think it would depend on the magnitude of the ask, Mayor Lennox.
Okay, so we're gonna have to wait and see what the ask is then. Karen?
From a tracking point of view, if we don't put the ask on an agenda with direction or a motion, in 5 or 10 years, we'll be saying, remember the big dig in Mount Forest? What happened? And we won't have any. I just want to make it easy for somebody in 10 years. It's just easier to track if we have something formal on the agenda and in the minutes.
So as soon as that request comes in, we can add it to the agenda. Yeah, Lisa.
Yeah, Keith has every intent to get that letter off. We had spoken late last week anyway, when he wrote the support letter and then also wrote the letter about the Queens. Thought that he would cool it for another week or two before he came with another letter. So I think you can expect that for our next council meeting. And they're just talking about a nominal amount to get their account open. But yeah, I agree with you.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody have anything else from those BIA minutes that they want to discuss? Okay, so we do have a motion on the floor with a mover and seconder to receive those BIA minutes. So I'll call the motion. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. We're on to 2B now. This is the site plan agreement at 221 Industrial Drive in Mount Forest. So I'm going to say that that's moved by Dan, seconded by Lisa, that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Wellington North receive report DC 2020-014 regarding final approval of the Michael and Gail Hartshorn site plan agreement. And we'll open the floor for questions or comments. Steve?
Just have a couple for you, Dale, and I don't mean to sideswipe you. What, and maybe I can't even ask this, but what's the new business that's going to go in there? I can't
For you,
remember.
Marilyn, it's City Stone. They're currently in the Randhar buildings in West Gray. And so they're moving their shop from there onto Industrial Drive.
Great, thank you. And then how many more lots are left there that have availability?
So there's one right beside where City Stone is going in that council sold last fall to OK Construction, so they have not yet started. And then there are 5 other lots. 3 of them would require us, though, to complete the industrial park servicing. So to your earlier discussion, if we get some infrastructure dollars and we're looking for shovel-ready projects to go, we could service the industrial park on Industrial Drive there, and that would open up 3 more lots.
I love your off-the-cuff comments. That's fantastic.
I appreciate you raising the question, Councillor McCabe.
Thanks, Dale.
Okay, any other questions on this one? Darren, did you want to speak to this one?
Thank you, Mayor Lennox. Just to note that the lot beside City Stone that was sold to OK Construction, they've applied for a site plan approval, and it's my understanding they're eager to get going also. Just an update on that.
Okay, thank you for that. Any other questions, comments? Okay, so I'll call the motion then. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. That brings us to 4B. This is in regard to the wood, brush, and garden material program. So I'm going to say that's moved by Sherry, seconded by Steve. And the recommendation is that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Wellington North receive report OPS 2020-22 being report on the township's wood, brush, and garden material program. And further, the council directs staff to discontinue the township's wood, brush, and garden material program effective June 30th, 2020 in favor of Wellington County's new yard waste collection program. And further, the council acknowledge the work of township staff, specifically the transportation services and customer service teams, for their efforts over the years delivering this program. We'll open the floor for questions or comments. Dan, I think you were wanting to talk about this one. Go ahead.
I brought it up. I wanted to just say to Matt, I'm certainly in support of the recommendation. There's been a lot of work, I think, involved in wood and brush programs over the years. And so I guess I'm asking, so officially on June 30th, the Township of Wellington North is out of the wood and brush collection program. So that's my first comment or question. And my second one is how are we going to get people educated about this? This is gonna be the key part to this whole program. So the education piece, everybody knows as well as I do that the minute the township or the county goes by there and picks up garbage or waste, people are putting it right back out there, and bags of brush and grass clippings will sit there for months. So I guess the important part of this whole thing is the education piece, Matt, and I'm sure that we can work at that over time. But I certainly support the recommendation and do want to acknowledge all the work that our township staff have done over the years in regards to they take a lot of pride in their community, and it's hard, and I know it's hard for them sometimes to drive by a pile of brush that's been sitting there for 2 weeks or longer, or bags or a couch or whatever it is, but they take a lot of pride in this community, and they should be acknowledged for what they've done in the past.
Okay, thanks, Dan. Did you want to comment on any of that, Matt?
Just through you, Mayor Lennox, to Councillor Yake. I think tonight will be an important first step if council agrees to endorse kind of the recommendation to start that conversation. And like any change of service, as far as change of service provider, there's an education piece that the township will have to get behind. But it won't be without its challenges. There's no denying that.
Okay, thank you. Mike, do you want to wade in here?
Mayor Lennox, I think part of the education piece is that we're waiting to see what the program looks like in comparison to the service that we've provided, Wellington North has provided over a number of years. Basically what we've heard to date is that there's going to be 2 pickups in the spring and 2 pickups in the fall in each of the communities, and the county expanded the program to do pickups in more of some of the rural sections of Wellington North this year that we typically have not done. So the program has already changed, but I think there's some anxiety amongst all of us, myself included, in that what the county's program will look like effective July 1st. How is it going to measure up to the program that our residents have been used to for a number of years? And education will be super important, and I agree with those comments, but getting people to adjust to what the program looks like from the county will be, there will be some growing pains, I guess I would say, around that, or at least I anticipate there will be.
I absolutely think you're right, Mike. I think we've been very fortunate, and we've had a Cadillac, if I can use that term, quality of service for our residents in Arthur and Mount Forest with our current brush and yard waste program. I think the county program, as is planned for other municipalities, will be a new exciting service offering. For us, it may not look quite as rosy as it does elsewhere, in that we've already had an extremely high level of service. So yeah, we're going to have some growing pains and some struggle with educating people and recognizing that the dates are, if you leave it out, you put the material out a day late, then somebody's not going to come by and pick it up right away. That's going to challenge us. And the fall dates are also intended that in the county program to pick up the leaf piece of things, part of it as well, which I think will continue to challenge us as well, to make sure that we get the leaves gathered up and out of our storm sewers. So, go ahead, Sherry.
Thank you, Mayor Lennox. Yeah, I'd just like to say thank you to staff. I was a huge advocate of this program. I've had a few questions about what the county program is going to look like. I guess my question is sort of, through education, we know and have identified that we're going to have some growing pains and some struggles. Is there any thoughts or discussion on how, for 3 or 4 months, we don't have waste or bags full of leaves or garden waste sitting out on our streets? Is there some kind of plan to sort of help alleviate that, or kind of smooth that over into the transition?
Yeah, that's.
I know it's a slippery slope, but I also know that folks being folks will put stuff out in hopes that perhaps maybe it will get picked up, and it will become an eyesore if it doesn't happen.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a huge challenge. I don't know whether staff have given any consideration to what that transition looks like or how we facilitate it, but I think in some extent we're waiting and beginning to see some of the education efforts that the county is making around introducing this new program. There's been some spreads in the Wellington Advertiser you may have seen.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think there will be transition challenges. Matt or Mike, have you guys had any thoughts about what that looks like, or how we manage that?
Through you, Mayor Lennox, I had just written down some brainstorm ideas as far as, I think the first step is that there'd be a notice by the roads department just to make the resident aware of what the county program is, or that the county program's available. Some other more forceful options would be potentially fees and charges bylaw for the cleanup of it, property standards bylaw, or council could just direct staff that, for 2020, maybe we're going to try to keep not a similar, but some kind of service provision where we do a cleanup after the county goes through. I think those are just 3 that come to mind, but I think there's, I think it's going to be difficult, because I know this weekend in Mount Forest, people were putting out piles, and yeah, if those aren't going to get picked up till October, that's not necessarily a great news story.
No, for sure. Any other, Mike?
I think Councillor Yake noted it early in his comments that there is, it's human nature for some that they don't necessarily check the calendar and the piles get picked up, and then they decide, oh, gee, I forgot to get my pile out. And to our staff's credit, they've not let those things linger for months and months and months. I don't necessarily think that will be the same case with the county program, but I don't know. So I don't want to prejudge until we get to it. But there is a history, and we've all seen it, where people bring their piles out after the final pickup date, and typically our staff have handled those situations. And yeah, we've talked about enforcement, we've talked about fines, we've talked about lots of ways to try and address it going forward, but it will be, without knowing to what extent the service level is going to look like from the county, we don't really know. And that's not a great answer to Councillor Burke's question, but yeah, until we go through it, I think it is going to be hard for us really to assess how successful the transition is to the county program.
Yeah, I think from my understanding of the program, the date will be the date, and if you don't hit the date, you're not getting picked up of that material, and you'll be asked to put that material into yellow bags to be picked up in the weekly waste, the user pay garbage bag program. I'm going to go to Steve and then Dan.
Just got one quick question, Andy, and I think as you sit on county council, whose I guess brainchild was this to for the county to come in and offer a service that we already are offering?
I'm not sure that I want to assign credit to anybody in particular, Steve, but this is a service that has been, particularly the service we've delivered. I refer to it as a Cadillac service, Cadillac quality of service, and I don't say that lightly. We've offered this service when virtually every other municipality in the county has not offered a similar service. Now, there's some variations where some of the municipalities have done some collection, but not an organized program like ours. But they had lots of residents clamoring for it in other municipalities.
Right.
So there's been demand put forward. Because we've already had the program, the demand hasn't come from our community, but the demand has come from elsewhere. Yeah, I think that because of that, the other municipalities, for the most part, this will seem like a huge improvement. I think we're kind of unique across the county in this regard, in that what we have been doing previously is actually a higher level of service than what the county is looking to offer. At the time, I tried to advocate for more pickup dates. I was not successful in that regard, mostly because I wanted to try to minimize the challenges we have with transition from our program to the county program.
I guess if I can follow, I have a follow-up question, Mayor. Is there an opt-out option? Like, do we have to take their service?
That hasn't been explored at this point. We did opt out here in the spring. They offered us an exceptional yard waste pickup, but that was because we had established our program before the county got into that.
Right.
I think there's a lot of questions to be asked before we'd want to really pursue that. Do we really want to take on that job? The county is supposed to be the one that's accountable for management of solid waste. I think we really ought to let the county do it. They do a pretty good job of dealing with solid waste, and if it's not adequate, then we need to advocate for more service.
Okay, thank you.
Dan?
Well, when you go from Cadillac service to Chev service, I mean, there's going to be issues. And it's going to be, this is such a visual, this is so visual in our community everywhere that, you know, this, I can just see that the amount of calls just based on this program are going to increase because of the number of, just because the stuff's sitting there. If somebody puts out a bag on July 1st and it sits there till September, October, I mean, neighbors are going to be upset. Everybody's going to be annoyed. So this is going to be just it's going to be a difficult transition. And I'm okay with trying it, but I think it's going to have to be reviewed after the fall pickup for sure. and see how it's worked, and see if we do need more pickups, and see how our staff handles the whole situation. So it's going to be, it certainly is going to be a difficult change for everyone.
On the positive side, I think the majority of yard waste does happen particularly early in the spring. So we've come through that period, and hopefully the fall will be a little bit easier time to transition this. I would also add that for those who are tech savvy, the county now has an app that you can put on your iPhone or Android device that will remind you when to put the garbage out or when to put the yard waste out, and it has the information that's called Recycle Coach app. You can download it from the county website, and I downloaded it, of course. I wanted to see what it was all about, and it's a good reminder because I've had bi-weekly garbage pickup, so I don't remember every week to put the garbage out, and I find it helps. So I think that's another tool we can use to remind people when things are going to happen if they're inclined that way. But I think what I'm hearing is we're going to be playing a bit of a wait and see game with this to see how this unfolds, which I think is going to be a struggle because the minute we rush in to clean up the mess that's left behind, it kind of encourages the behavior that we don't want. So it's going to be a struggle. Any other questions or comments on this one? I would just like to add my voice again over and above what's in the motion to our staff, because I think you said it, Councillor Yates, they take a great deal of pride in our community and have done a great job with it. So I really appreciate that commitment and the work that's been done to date, and hopefully we can find a way to make this work. Any final questions, comments? Okay, I'll call the motion. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Now we're on to 5A. This is correspondence with regard to the Ministry of Transportation. So I'm going to say that one's moved by Lisa, seconded by Dan. And the recommendation is that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Wellington North receive correspondence dated May 19th, 2020 from Karen Wallace, Director of Legislative Services / Clerk to Ministry of Transportation regarding regulation number OREG 316/03, the Highway Traffic Act. And I believe regulation 316/03 deals with ATVs and UTVs on municipal roads. So, Steve.
I just got a quick question for you, Karen. The last paragraph of that note to the ministry, could you explain that a little further to me?
So when I brought a report to council in January of this year, it was based on information that our MPP Pettipies had sent to us. And at that time, the regulations were drafted, and that was Bill 107. And they were drafted that if the regulation passed as it was, municipalities would have to pass a bylaw to prohibit ATVs on their roads. So the default under that proposal was permissive. Since that time, what's come out in the OREG for public commenting is you will have to pass a regulation to permit them. And I don't know what the change, why that was. I didn't see a lot of activity through like AMCTO or Federation of Agriculture. I don't know what brought that change. But if this passes the way it is, we are going to, if you want them on the roads, we're going to have to we're going to have to pass a permissive bylaw, which is totally around from what they had proposed in January.
Okay, thank you.
which is back to where we started, basically.
I was just
Pretty
gonna
much,
say,
yep.
isn't that kind of where we started?
Yeah.
This conversation. So then, if I can indulge you again, Karen, and through you, Mayor. So where does that leave the county?
It's pretty much back to where we were. The comments that we had, I can't remember a couple of years ago when we talked, I did a report in, I think the fall, and then a couple of years ago, it was the police will enforce what you pass. The problem is if the county and adjoining municipalities don't do that, you know, the public really doesn't know if they're driving on a municipal road, an MTO road, a county road, when they pass into Mincha, when they pass into Mapleton. It just, to me, in my mind, if they're going to permit them, just permit them everywhere, because it's an enforcement nightmare. And not even for, you know, bylaw or the police, for the people riding them. You know, who knows what road they're on? You know, they don't know it's a county road. They don't know it's a municipal road. So we're back to that same issue that we had, which doesn't mean if it had been left the way it was that municipalities weren't going to pass a bylaw to prohibit it. But I think less of them would have done that. Then now they're back to where they were, where you're going to have to pass a bylaw to permit it.
Okay, thank you.
So I think the bottom line is we got to wait to see what the final draft is before we do anything.
Lord.
Yeah.
Before it changes again.
And then maybe perhaps our neighbors are of a different mind than they were before. I don't know.
Well, the conversations I've had with Mapleton and Minto at a high level were quite open to the idea of allowing them on our local roads at the very least, and working with the county to include county roads in that jurisdiction. But I think the last time we talked about it, we thought we better wait till the province nails this down before we move anywhere with it.
Yes. Yes, because I believe in the fall you were going to, you know, have those discussions, and then MPP Pettipe sent this through, and my report in January said, because it was recommended to us by the province that you should wait until the regulations are passed before you do anything.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions or comments on that one?
Thank you, Karen.
Okay, thank you. So we'll move on from that. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. And now we'll move on to 5B. This is in regard to the Center Wellington Community Foundation media release. And that's moved by Steve, seconded by Sherry, that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Wellington North receives Center Wellington Community Foundation media release May 19th, 2020. For Center Wellington Community Foundation takes part in the new Emergency Community Support Fund. Open that up for any discussion. Lisa?
The only reason that I pulled that kind of requires me to flip my hat a little bit and just under my one of my other hats, the Center Wellington Foundation did approach the local Federation of Agriculture to see what the agricultural businesses needed in response to the Emergency Community Support Fund. So that's something that we're taking.
Sorry, Lisa, you got cut off there a little bit. You just started talking about the federation, and then we couldn't hear you anymore. At least I couldn't.
Is it better with my camera off?
It's clear now.
Okay, can I just leave my camera off? I've been having a really terrible time. That's why I've been so quiet. I can hardly hear what you guys are saying.
Okay.
So as I put on my other hat for the Federation of Agriculture, the Center Wellington Community Foundation did approach our county federation to see what agricultural businesses needed with regards to the Emergency Community Support Fund. So that is something that we're taking a look at right now, and we'll be getting back to that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments in regard to this item? Dale, are you still with us?
Still here.
So yeah, I just wanted to let council be aware of the other correspondence that came from the Center Wellington Community Foundation, and I just couldn't remember all the details. But Raymond Susi sent out a note that they'd been successful in getting some grant funding, of which the funds that we have would also be a beneficiary of. Did I have that right?
Was that just very recent, Mayor Lennox?
Yes.
Yes. So that is correct. They actually received a anonymous donor made a contribution that will be added to the funds that Wellington North has already established, and can then be used for applicants as well. And then this one, the announcement here, is funding that they got through the federal government to support not-for-profits and charities through COVID-19. And this is applicable to Wellington North as well. So I think it's showing some good result from the partnership that we've established with the Center Wellington Community Foundation and the establishing of the two funds late last year.
Yeah, it certainly makes an opportunity for us to benefit from some of those dollars that we didn't have before. So,
correct.
Karen?
We will put that, I believe we just got that today. Is that correct, Dale? So we will include that on the next agenda just for public information.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thanks, Dale. Any other questions or comments on this item? Okay, all those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. That brings us to the end of our items for consideration. Any notice of motion today? Okay, not seeing any community group meeting program report. And, while we're dealing with the challenges of COVID-19 and not being able to get together in groups like we used to, I've been making comments to that regard with regard to this, but that probably wasn't fair to Councillor Hearn and all of her various involvements. So I don't want to prejudice that, but if anybody has anything they'd like to report on this, that'd be great. Anyone have anything they'd like to share? Steve?
Tomorrow I'll be going up to, and it sounds funny to say this, but I will actually be going up to the Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority office. Dick Hibma, it is his last day. So there's kind of a come and go, and I had to book a 15-minute time slot to go into the boardroom to send my best wishes to Dick. And then we also are going to have a chance to meet with the new GM, Jennifer Stevens, tomorrow as well. And then we actually have a virtual meeting on the 4th with the SVCA as well.
Thanks, Steve. Lisa? You're muted, Lisa, still.
There we go. Both of them. I'm trying to save bandwidth. It's not working. The Arthur Downtown Revitalization Committee. Of course, it doesn't exist anymore, but I just wanted to alert everyone that the community group sign is going up on the north end of town, which is exciting. So one more thing that's being done. Let's see, there are new banners going up in Mount Forest. So the design is done, and I think we're looking to mid to late June for installing those. The other thing that I wanted to highlight is the BMX skate park. Of course, I did call for a meeting for, I think it's the 10th of June. Mostly an update meeting. But I mean, the skate park has had a couple of real setbacks this year. It's been really unfortunate. I mean, firstly, because this collective action at the school. I mean, Mandy and I were ready to get into the classroom a whole year, and that didn't happen. So we didn't get our fundraising plans on, which I guess doesn't matter anymore because we can't really do some elaborate fundraising activities, right? So we didn't get to discuss design, we didn't get to do that, and now COVID has hit them. And I mean, that's hurting all of the Lions fundraising for the rest of the year. So anyway, I wanted to have an update meeting and, you know, appreciate all of the hard work that the Lions have done. And I don't want them to be down, and get some energy back into them and maybe some ideas on how we can move forward. And the last thing is I have my pumpkin planted. I hope the rest of you guys do.
I'm picking mine up tomorrow.
See if my sheep manure is the trick.
Okay, thanks, Lisa. Anybody else?
No, none from here.
So based on your comments, Lisa, I guess everybody got the challenge to grow their pumpkin for this year for the Mets group again. I haven't yet committed to doing that, but I noticed that the Center Wellington mayor and Mapleton mayor have both dove in with a fair amount of trash talk. So I was going to suggest to them that the stuff that they were spreading is best applied to the soil, but I haven't yet done that.
Well, it took 3 of them to plant that pumpkin. Did mine on my own.
Is anybody else going to get into the game here too?
I'm actually picking my pumpkin plant up tomorrow from Jim Coffey, so.
Okay.
Challenge accepted.
I'll have to see if there's still one available for me.
And I, Mayor Lennox, started my own just in case. So I've got my pumpkin plant started. So I'm going to try my own seeds this time around.
Good for you, Sherry. Lisa, did you have your hand up?
Special.
What was?
Just wanted to say that Steve's pumpkin is actually at the municipal office.
Oh.
Been delivered.
Oh, fair enough. I just actually texted Jim tonight, so okay, thank you. I'll see you tomorrow, Mike.
Dan, you started to say something.
Oh, I have some special fertilizer if anybody needs any. Come see.
You got an in?
Ellen.
I think it's both in and out, Steve.
Jeez.
Okay, on that note, I don't have anything else to add to the item here, so I guess that brings us to bylaws. And I'm going to say that this is moved by Dan, seconded by Lisa, that bylaw number 49-20 being a bylaw to authorize the sale of real property being part of Part Lot 57, PL 402 Arthur Village, Part Lot 56, PL 402 Arthur Village, Wellington North, part of PIN 71095-0099 LT be read a first, second, and third time and enacted. Any discussion on that? All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. That brings us to our cultural moment. Just give me a second here and I'll get it on my other screen so I can read it. So our cultural moment for June celebrates the Arthur Lions Club and BMX Skateboard Park. Founded in 1917, Lions Club International is the world's largest service club organization with over 46,000 clubs and 1.35 million members. Lions do whatever is needed to help their local communities and share a core belief: community is what we make it. The Arthur Lions Club received its charter in 1939, and since then, the group has given their valuable time and effort to improve our community. The club supports many different groups and organizations, including minor sports programs, the Agricultural Society, CNIB, Easter Seals, Groves Hospital, and with the help of local organizations, the club also distributes food hampers at Christmas time. In November 2017, the Lions Club approached the township with the idea of installing a BMX skateboard park. The park is to open by 2022, in time for the Village of Arthur to celebrate its 150th anniversary. Located on the Arthur Fairgrounds and fronting Eliza Street, the park will be open to skateboards, scooters, and bikes. The preliminary design includes a pump track, cement pad with various features, and circular dirt path with ramps. The Arthur Lions Club has set a fundraising goal of $250,000 and to date has raised approximately $68,000 towards the project. Fundraising events have unfortunately been paused due to COVID-19, and the club is thinking of new ways to reach out to the community and beyond. If you're interested in donating towards the project, please connect with the Lions Club President Al Rollins at alanjrollins@gmail.com, and that's submitted by the Arthur BMX Skateboard Ad Hoc Advisory Committee. That's cultural moment for June. And before we move to adjournment, just a reminder, next Monday we have a public meeting for a Committee of the Adjustment. Mount Forest Chamber of Commerce has a meeting Tuesday, June 9th at 7 p.m. The Arthur BMX Skateboard Park has a meeting on June 10th. What time is that meeting? Do you have that, Lisa? You're on mute, by the way.
It's in the evening. I think it's 8 p.m.
I believe it's 8 p.m.
Okay, thank you. The Recreation, Parks, and Leisure Committee has a meeting Wednesday, July 7th, 8:30 a.m.
No.
Arthur.
Is that correct, Steve?
No, that's
July.
July 7th, I believe, Mandy?
Yeah. Yes.
At 1:30.
1:30? Okay, I had 8:30. Okay, Arthur Chamber of Commerce, June 16th at 5:30. Arthur BAA, June 17th at 10:30 a.m. Wellington North Cultural Roundtable, June 18th at noon. And our next council meeting is Monday, June 22nd at 7 p.m. Okay. With that, I think that brings us to adjournment. So I'm gonna
confirming bylaw?
Oh, confirming bylaw. Thank you. Here we go. So that one is confirming bylaw, moved by Lisa, seconded by Dan. That bylaw number 50-20 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Wellington North at its regular meeting held on June 1st, 2020, be read a first, second, and third time and enacted. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. And adjournment, I'm going to say that's moved by Steve, seconded by Sherry, that the regular council meeting of June 1st, 2020 be adjourned at 8:54 p.m. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Good discussion.